everything is going to, at a minimum, I feel, be backed by Bitcoin.
Before we get started with the podcast, maybe give the people and the listeners a little bit of a background of who you are and why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Louisiana and I went to school and rough family life. And so I learned very early that I can hide behind a smile. And as long as I was smiling, people were happy around me. And so that led me to becoming a class clown more than it led me to becoming a valedictorian. And so I had more fun in school and I was looking more for the relationships than I was the education at first. And right out of high school, I joined the Air Force and I tested well enough to become a nuclear weapons technician. And so little bit of a difference there. Did that for 10 years and kind of had this realization that I wasn't fully on board with what the mission would require me to do in the fullest sense. And so I walked away from it at my 10-year mark and was trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do. And I realized that I went from joking to playing with some of the world's strongest weapon systems. So I can pretty much do anything if I honestly give it an attempt. And I fell in love with permaculture and ecological design and how to design sustainable landscapes and food systems. And so I've been doing that for about going on 10 years now. And when it comes to Bitcoin, it was this spot, and because I got in about 2015, thanks to my older brother, and I remember I was putting all these pieces together about how we could design these beautiful places that continue to get healthier and better every year, but I could never figure out how I was ever going to afford one or anyone my age or below, because everyone that's accustomed or acquainted with the fiat world, everything's going to continue to get more expensive forever. And so as I'm doing my studying through permaculture and through restoration agriculture, I had a lot of free time on my hands and I started listening to podcasts. I started listening to Andreas and Antonopoulos, and everything he was saying just started to click and make sense. And so I fell in love with this idea of what the world's hardest money could really mean. And so for me, it was a huge source of hope to match with the hope in designing these agricultural systems. And so I've been a huge advocate of it ever since. And about 2017, I really started taking it serious and started putting in uh, as much money as I could into it with every job that I would take on. And yeah, now I can't hush up about it. All I do is talk Bitcoin or some type of fun regenerative agriculture.
I love that. And you also mentioned you kind of went from nuclear weapons to planting trees, which it is a fun development.
Yeah, I went from like trying to blow the world up in some aspects, in some regard, to now I'm just trying to heal it any way possible. And really, I love the idea of using Bitcoin the way we are, because it's going to give a use case to Bitcoin that gold isn't going to be able to provide. Nothing else will. And we can prove that Satoshi did fix value and he fixed money, but he's also going to be responsible through that invention for starting to heal the environment. And that's something that fiat systems have done a great job in depleting and destroying around the world.
How is that working? For most Bitcoiners that are listening, it probably sounds quite logical. And if you say the same sentence in front of someone that hasn't studied Bitcoin, it just sounds completely absurd.
Yep.
How would you explain that it's logical that Bitcoin is actually good for the environment and the use cases it has?
So, that question right there is pretty much the biggest thing that we're working on, because the people that we're trying to talk to go and to work with to do this type of work, they all care about the environment and they all care deeply about trying to make the smartest decisions when it comes to the environment. And so when you bring up Bitcoin, so many of them are bought into the FUD. They're all bought into it boils a tub of water for every transaction. And so the first thing we do is we meet them with, let's talk about what the problem is, and let's discuss like what you see as the issues in the world, and let's bring that back to, all right, well, how is that connected to the fiat money and the ability to just print money out of thin air? And once you meet people there, you can explain what great money is, like the best form of money, go into Bitcoin, and then from that explain that, yes, there is a high energy usage, but look at what we're securing with that energy usage. And people have been, knock on this table here, the conversations I've had with different practitioners from around the globe, they've been way more receptive to the idea than I expected. And so, really, it's just about meeting people where they are first. Don't just try to proselytize Bitcoin and just come in thinking everyone's put in even 5 hours of work to it. Let's start off with finding out what they know, what they see as the issues. From there, you can start unwinding this rabbit and saying, well, hear me out. Would you be open to this? And man, like I said, so far it's been the thing that it's been received way better than we expected. Uh, I hope it continues this way.
And you also work with what is it called, the Bitcoin Stewardship? And there's also Daniel Batness somehow, and Daniel was I think like a month or 2 months, maybe 3 months ago on the podcast. So this was a lot of fun also. What are you doing there?
Yeah, so we're launching a business called the Bitcoin Stewardship Initiative, and the whole idea behind it is we want to raise money. We want to make investable opportunities to go and heal the earth, to help people afford to install regenerative agriculture systems, cap oil and gas wells that are leaking methane, to go out and fight desertification around the world. And the way we're doing that is we're gonna sell green bonds, and we're gonna back those green bonds with Bitcoin. And so what we've done is I reached out to Daniel. It was probably about 3.5 and 4 months ago now, and I just saw the Twitter Spaces he was on, and I was listening to it, and a guy commented below about how much help Daniel's been as a coach. And so typed up a message to Daniel. I reached out to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, this is who I am. This is a bit of my history, and this is what I've been doing the last about 10 years, and this is what I would like to do." And I couldn't believe that he responded back pretty dang quick. And we've been coaching together now for, like I said, about 3 months, and got to meet him in Vegas for the first time, which was incredible. He's such a genuine and nice guy. And yeah, like he came on. I asked him if he would like an actual spot once we have this thing launched. Would you be okay coming on as an advisor, and in time coming on as a board member as well? And to my surprise, he was like, absolutely. I love the mission. I love what y'all are doing. And he's been able to come on, because when it comes to fighting the FUD, man, he puts on a show on Twitter about combating the misinformation that's out there, and that preventing people from being able to save for the rest of their lives.
It has gotten better. Like people like him and a lot of other people that kind of contributed a lot of facts to the discussion really kind of got this whole ESG thing a little bit out of the way. This is where I feel like why Bitcoin is actually working. Even if Bitcoin would have been flawed, the Bitcoin has such great people in there that we will fix all the flaws that will come out in Bitcoin, and we will fight to death to actually defend why Bitcoin is better to the world. And the good thing is we have the facts on our side, and we will present them as good as we can. And yeah, from there we can just go and do things. It's fascinating.
I can't remember who said that not too long ago. Like, you can just go and do it. Like, you don't have to wait for permission. I wish I could remember who said it on Twitter, and I've seen it a bunch since then, and it's spot on. Like, we can just go and do things, take a risk, and put in your work before it. Take that risk, and the Bitcoin community has been so positive. Whenever we would start talking to people about what we want to do or what the hopes are, everybody's been so supportive. How can we help? What do you need? And that's great, because you don't get that in a ton of other communities. There's a very scarcity mindset in a bunch of other communities. Whereas in Bitcoin, the mindset is abundance, even though it's a scarce asset, which is kind of backwards when you think about it. But when you get to Bitcoin, people realize that if this thing continues playing out the way we've all put in these, thousands of hours to understand, then whatever amount you have right now, as long as you can pass that on, it's enough to change your bloodline. The real thing is, how early does that change come into effect? And so I can't find a better life's purpose than to fix the money for the billions of people that don't even have the ability to bank themselves, and they're subject to restructuring loans that Alex Gladstein's pointed out in the IMF and the World Bank. And man, that's just a wild concept.
Yeah, it's such a it's a way better system. It's so obviously 100x, 1000x better than what we currently have. That of course it gets adopted, and it's interesting when we think about the energy use and Bitcoin mining. How do you feel like? What is kind of the connection between Bitcoin and renewable energy, and maybe also like the as you worked in nuclear weapons, maybe like nuclear energy also in the mix. There's a seems to be a big a big how should I say, a lot of people in Bitcoin with the energy, they also like nuclear energy in that mix. How do you see the connection between renewable nuclear energy and like mining in general?
Yeah, no, there's very much a connection there. And that's one of the points I love to point out to people when I am having this conversation we talked about earlier is when you look at the amount of the network that's secured by renewable energy or by stranded energy, energy that wouldn't be used otherwise, it would just be wasted. I mean, it's way up there. It's over half the network now that's being secured by these methods, and that's only going to continue to grow because Bitcoin is built in order to or incentivize. You're incentivized to find the cheapest amount of available energy, and so I think it's an incredible thing, and it was a huge FUD part for a while, but it's I was talking to a man recently, and he was explaining, that's great that they're using the stranded energy. That's fine, but it's still producing a lot of heat. And I said, but the heat is a thing that we can now layer on different like use cases on top of. And he just kind of looked at me. What do you mean? Well, there's people in the colder part of the world that are using that to extend the growing season in their greenhouses. There's people that are using it, like the Bitcoin timber people that are the sawmill that's a Bitcoin standard. They're going on and they're using that to dry out all the wood, which normally it would air dry and take so much longer. There's projects overseas in Europe where they're using it to actually heat cities and warehouses. And it's like, so if we can stack and layer these functions, which is one of the things we're taught to do when we're doing our ecological design, then there's such an amazing thing that is there that's the base case is money. And so when it comes to nuclear, I'm personally a huge fan. I think that as long as it's done smartly and safely, it is very safe. I understand people say when it goes wrong bad. And if you look at some of the incidents in the past, they're not wrong. But at the same time, when you look at how much power it can produce, how clean it is, and what it really represents, I tend to err on the side that I think that in order for society to continue advancing, we need to use way more energy all around the world. We just need to get better at creating those clean energy and the smart usage of it instead of just being pollutive and kind of destructive with the use. And so I'm a huge fan, and I do look forward to the day that Bitcoin mining rigs are all hooked up on massive reactors because it only makes sense that that energy would go to producing the world's hardest money and securing the strongest wall of cryptographic energy.
It's that it's so weird, those arguments that sometimes come with like, yeah, but like, if it goes wrong badly. The same thing you can say about an airplane. Yeah, if you drive a car and a car has an accident, it's not as bad as if an airplane has an accident, because potentially in an airplane crash everyone dies. Like if an airplane crashes or has some major failure, the chances that everyone dies is a lot higher than if the same thing happens with cars. So I think like new technology always has to be has to paddle dust the ideas way better than anything else. And nuclear energy has, I think, like has a very hard thing because they are doing something dangerous, but at the same time it is an extremely amazing technology. And I don't understand enough to really really talk about that, but I think it should be it should never be an argument of like, oh, if it goes bad really badly. That it seems
Yeah,
like a
genuine,
very stupid
genuine.
argument for me.
And but I get it. Like we're taught we're not taught. It's instinctive in human nature to find what could be a problem and to try to solve for it. And the thing that's ultimately your ability to help you make smart decisions is the education you have in that subject. And it takes a lot of time to understand the thing that we're discussing right now for people to get genuinely comfortable with it. And so they lean on what's being told to them. And as we know, the marketing world is very strong. And so it's really, I say all that to say I empathize with the people because I was once in that position as well, where I didn't, and I'm not trying to say I'm better or I'm smarter, but I do feel I've had the luxury of putting in a ton of time to understanding it. And now through that, my thoughts on all of it has evolved as well. And so it is silly and we get frustrated, but I feel a lot of our friends, and if we talk to other people in the space, they were probably once somewhere similar, even with Bitcoin, the same kind of way, you know? And so,
Interesting, yeah. How do you feel like about the Bitcoin adoption in 2025? You have been in Bitcoin some while, so I think Bitcoin 2025 seems to be like outrageously positive, and seems like
yeah, no, it
nothing
really,
really
the
stops us.
thing that I get the most excited is when I see the Bitcoin adoption in places outside of America and like Europe, when I see the adoption in countries that have horrible financial standards, and you see that adoption is the highest and it's the most there. Because inevitably, in the system that we're all in, they're going to continue to debase and like devalue our money, which is stealing our time with our family, our friends, our ability to go and join clubs, our ability to learn how to play the guitar or do the things that we would all like to do. And so eventually everyone is going to get pushed to that point where they say, what is going on? What is this? And they'll be open to putting that time to understand. And we say in the Bitcoin world for a long time, Michael Saylor put it like, have fun staying poor. I hear it. There is a place for that, especially when you're constantly getting dragged by the media. But in this case, you just feel kind of bad for the people because they don't realize that it's coming for them as well. And the way I have this mindset that because I've tried to talk to so many people about Bitcoin, and so many people, if you start off just trying to be a prophet about it, they'll just dig their heels in the sand. They're done. They don't want the conversation. And now I'll introduce it to people, and the ones that are interested, I will definitely share with. But in my mind, everyone's a Bitcoiner. They just don't realize it yet. And so the more I can just look at that and kind of realize that it's coming, you know, like I'll just look at it in my head. It keeps me a little grounded. I don't get so frustrated. And it's like, it's okay. You know, eventually in time, I want to leave this where if you ever have any thoughts, questions, concerns, reach out because I love talking about Bitcoin. I will spend day and night. Ask my wife. She got orange pilled just listening to me, listening to all the podcasts and everything and just blabbing nonstop at the dinner table. And yeah, we're all going to be there in time. Eventually, people will realize what it is because when you ask people, "Hey, how does a ACH transaction occur?" Like when you swipe your credit card or your debit card, what's happening behind the scenes? None of them know. It's like, all right, so why do you need to know every intricate detail about the Bitcoin network? Can't you know? But they were brought up with this, and this is what's comfortable. And so we're just in that phase, you know. There's really fun YouTube videos of when they brought out credit cards for the first time and they brought out debit cards and this is never going to work. Who's going to use a credit card to buy Burger King? And now, I mean, people are using credit cards like it's just this is what you do. And so as time goes on, like our kids, they're going to be the first ones that are just brought up like, no, this is just how it is. Like we're use Bitcoin. What are you talking about? And so we're just living in the transition.
And it's just the most fun to be in. What do you think? Because you mentioned that you're most excited about the adoption in countries outside of the Western civilization. What do you think will Bitcoin do for human rights
Massive.
and lifting up the
Absolutely
spirits?
massive. And when you listen to like Lynn Alden said this quite a few times about how being over in Egypt, the way that they store value is by buying bricks so they can continue to add onto their house. And then I believe she said something about phone minutes as well because they hold their value. When you think about that as a way of storing your work as a man or a woman who's trying to save so your family can have some type of fund for the future and you're honest about it, that's just kind of wild to think about. And so when you give people the ability to be smart with their money, to look after their family, and to say that, look, you're going to have it a little bit better than I did, that, I mean, just the incentives alone in that statement are just wild what that means for humanity. And so I get the most excited because, I mean, there's been some, like I was just at the Bitcoin Policy Institute Summit in DC, and Alex Gladstein had on the lady, I wish I could remember her name, the woman from Afghanistan that's using Bitcoin to help educate kids and kind of escape the control of the Taliban. It's absolutely wild what she's able to do there and what that means. And I've been very fortunate in my time in the Air Force. I was stationed in North Dakota for 5 years, the Netherlands for 3, Turkey for 2, and I got to do a ton of traveling. And when I was over there, I got to realize that, man, these people are really kind. They are a little bit different, but overall, we're all the same. Like, I talk to fathers and uncles and moms, and they only want good for their kids. They want their kids to have a good education, have a good life. They might pray to a different God. You know, they might eat some different food, really tasty. And it's just, they, overall, though, the spirit that is a human, we share so much more in common than we do different. And I think the money is a tool of that control, which keeps us all separate and keeps it kind of in one person's favor. Whereas now, man, this is an even playing field because those people in Africa or those people all throughout, you know, the Middle East, they know how to use cell phones. They know how to sign up. They can download wallets. They can start doing this. They don't have to have gold hidden in their, you know, in their house to be worried about being stolen. And no, like they can now start to set up their family and their bloodline in a way that has never been possible. That's incredible, you know? And so I think there's going to be some incredible people, especially this is the part of the game theory I like the most. This is the one that I think is the funnest. Whereas as this thing continues to rise up and it continues to gain in value, you have people that, well, as Checkmate says, there's always going to be sellers at some point because there's people that are going to have life-changing money. But those are the cypherpunks. Those are the people from the beginning that think a little bit differently, took the risk. And so what happens when you have these people who want to see things changed now have ostensive wealth and they can start investing in the projects that bring about the change. They can invest in the politicians that think more their way and it gets more entrenched. And so I think it's a really fun thought of what this money truly means and what it can do, because it definitely shook up the control system that was in place on the world for sure.
It weirdly enough brings us closer together. It's if Bitcoin is if Bitcoin is successful, and I truly think this will be the case. It's just a question of when. I think Bitcoin will come to a point where it brings
Yeah,
the Earth
100%.
a little bit
You know,
closer
and
together.
what happens as all these other weaker currencies continue to hyperinflate away? They get onto the dollar, and eventually that follows the same path. Well, everything is going to, at a minimum, I feel, be backed by Bitcoin. There'll probably still be some fiat currencies out there, but I believe that they will end up being backed by gold, Bitcoin, and other different reserves. And so, but what do you do when now you can trade with anybody anywhere in the world almost instantaneously with Lightning and whatever networks come out on top and layer twos and then threes? I mean, that completely opens up things that, you know, they could control who you can you can barter with through the fiat system. They can say that we won't allow any transactions this way. You can't do that anymore. You can't stop me from receiving money and sending this package somewhere. And, you know, and so this is where I think it's pretty incredible how even the playing field will be in this future world, even though, like, right now, the point we're living through, it seems like just a few people have all the, you know, all the Bitcoin air quotes, but that's going to continue to be pressed out and that's going to continue to get divvied out to everybody. And Yeah, I'm very hopeful. Getting out of the Air Force, I didn't have that much hope because I was a little lost and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I found the permaculture and I found my mentor, Mark Shepard, and his restoration agriculture. And that gave me a lot of hope. Then I didn't have the hope because I couldn't afford it. And I was like, well, I'm never going to be able to have my own farm. And then I learned about Bitcoin and I was like, well, this is incredible. That's what I was looking for here. And so now I just ooze hope nonstop. I'm just smiling all the time. And I think that's been my greatest orange pill is that right there is why are you so happy? People are like, what do you have? What is this? And it's like, well, let me tell you about what I do. Like if you were in these shoes, if you had the vision that I see for the future, you would feel really positive as well.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.